When alarms start going off, you know something bad is happening. But this time, it was quiet. The only noise you could hear was off of the printers. Sometime in the early morning, every label printer on the floor began spitting neon pink sheets stamped with the same cheerful phrase, "Access denied." The color was so loud it felt like an insult. Then the conveyors stopped. Robotic arms froze mid-swing. Screens blinked and returned with padlock icons. 300 workers stood still, hands hovering over parts they could not scan or move. In manufacturing, silence is never peaceful. Silence is money bleeding where you cannot see it. Renee Park, our floor superintendent, jogged up with a radio and a bolt clutched like a worry stone. "Tessa, scheduling is locked. Quality is locked. Shipping cannot pull anything. The plant is blind." I stared at the central dashboard near line 4. One sentence glowed in the middle: "System quarantine active." "I know," I said. "My name is Tessa Quinn. I am 47, and I have spent 22 years at Riverton Components. I started as a process engineer, then climbed into operations until I became the person everyone called when something broke, and they wanted it unbroken without drama. Yesterday, Orchid Forge Holdings decided I was too essential to be a single point of failure. So they removed me. They deactivated my badge, locked my accounts, and slid me into a consulting role with all the authority of a motivational poster. Lucas Brandt smiled while it happened. Morgan Vance, the new finance chief, nodded like he was approving a software update. 16 months earlier, corporate dropped a rescue project on my desk. Output was down, scrap was up, and the board was muttering about consolidation, which is corporate for goodbye. They named the initiative the Pulse Line Rebuild, like we were doing surgery with forklifts. I did not hire consultants. I walked the floor and listened. The binders were outdated. The official processes were half myth. Workers were improvising daily workarounds to prevent jams and injuries, then getting blamed for not following procedure. So I rebuilt the workflow with the people who lived inside it. We upgraded one section at a time, so production kept moving. Scrap fell. Injuries dropped. Output climbed until other facilities started calling for the playbook. That was when Lucas arrived. Lucas was 32, fresh MBA shine, suit crisp enough to cut glass. Orchid Forge introduced him as transformation lead. He praised my results, asked for my documentation, requested access to support scalability. He said all the right words with the wrong hunger underneath. Then he asked for edit privileges. He arrived with a presentation promising bigger gains if we reduced manual discretion. Manual discretion meant the human feedback loops that caught trouble before it became a headline. I should have refused. Instead, I let ambition wear my signature. Renee noticed first. "He keeps asking what happens if safeguards get disabled," she whispered near the tool crib. "He calls it stress testing. It sounds like shopping for a failure." That night I checked the logs. Lucas had made tiny edits buried deep in subroutines, timing offsets, error handling changes, a quiet muting of operator alerts. None of it improved anything. All of it created graceful ways for the system to collapse under pressure. I confronted him. He smiled without using his eyes. "Minor calibrations," he said. "Future-proofing your framework." A few days later, I was called into a continuity review with Morgan Vance, Lucas, and two corporate executives who looked like they had never met a torque wrench. They praised my leadership, worried about sustainability, and handed me a new org chart. Lucas would lead the final phase. I would advise. My access would be temporarily restricted. By late afternoon, my badge was dead. By early morning, the plant was dead quiet. Now I stood at line 4, watching workers glance at one another like passengers on a stalled elevator. Renee kept her shoulders squared, but her eyes asked the question everyone was thinking. Are we going to lose our jobs because someone wanted a prettier dashboard? My phone buzzed. Morgan Vance again. I answered, letting the silence sharpen. Tell me, I said, how expensive is your optimism today? Morgan Vance did not open with an apology. He opened with numbers, because some people think digits can do the work of character. Tessa, production is down, he said. We are missing shipments. Clients are calling. Lucas says the system is rejecting schedules. Lucas says, I repeated. That phrase is getting more mileage than our forklifts. This is not the moment for sarcasm. I disagree, I said. Sarcasm is one of the few resources you have not managed to shut down. Through the phone, I could hear the plant, radios barking, forklifts beeping with nowhere to go, the anxious hum of stalled equipment. Morgan lowered his voice. We need your input. I am a consultant, I said. Consultants give opinions. They do not touch systems. That was the point of yesterday. A pause. Then, we can reinstate access. Emergency authorization. Who signs it? I asked. Lucas. I laughed once. The person who cut the brake line is offering me the keys to the ambulance. Morgan exhaled. What do you want? There it was. Not we were wrong, not help us, but what do you want? I want the plant protected, I said. No layoffs, no contractor replacements, and no more unreviewed edits to the platform. Put it in writing. Fine, he said too quickly. And I want the audit logs preserved and mirrored, I added. I want proof before anyone scrubs it. Morgan hesitated. Lucas has been optimizing. Words are cute, I said. Evidence is cuter. He ended the call with promises and urgency. He called again a moment later, like persistence could substitute for competence. I let it ring and watched his message preview bloom. Tessa, please, we are bleeding. Bleeding was correct. I did not go to the plant, not yet. I went to the diner across from the main gate, the booth with a view of the loading docks. Trucks sat idle. Workers clustered near the entrance in bright vests, whispering in the way people do when their jobs feel fragile. Renee Park called. It is chaos, she said. Lucas is sprinting between the control room and the floor with printouts like paper can run a line. He keeps calling it an integration hiccup. He broke it, I said. He is asking if you left hidden documentation, Renee added. He thinks there is a secret manual. There is, I said. It is called experience. Renee's voice dropped. People are scared. They are asking about layoffs. Tell them this, I said. If anyone threatens layoffs today, they should laugh. The plant is down because leadership wanted a trophy. A trophy does not ship parts. After that, Sasha Wilkes, the union chair, called with the kind of calm that comes right before a storm. Lucas is talking about bringing in a contractor team, she said. He used the phrase agile labor. If contractors show up, you file grievances until the filing cabinet collapses, I said. And you remind Morgan that a plant that cannot run without its operators is a very large paperweight. Sasha paused. Do you have proof of the edits? Yes, I said, and I'm going to make it impossible to bury. I called Jonah Bell, our independent controls auditor, and asked for a forensic snapshot of the platform and safety logic, taken before anyone could rewrite history. Jonah did not ask why. He just asked where to send the invoice. By the time my coffee went cold, my plan had shape. Let Lucas sweat. Let Morgan panic. Let the board feel the cost of arrogance in actual currency. Then I would return, not as their patch, but as their mirror. Revenge does not have to be loud. It just has to be timed. Before I left the diner, I sent one more message, not to Morgan or Lucas, but to Scott Meeks in maintenance, the person who knew every motor tolerance and every shortcut that could become a catastrophe. I asked him to document every abnormal request Lucas had made. Scott replied with 3 words. Already started, boss. The authorization arrived as a PDF with more signatures than sincerity. Morgan Vance forwarded it with a subject line that tried to sound casual and failed. Access restored temporarily. The document promised no layoffs tied to the disruption, required all platform edits be reviewed by me and the auditor, and reinstated my credentials for stabilization support. It also included a clause that I could be removed again once normal operations resumed. Corporate loved temporary mercy. I drove to the plant and stopped at the guard booth on purpose. Yesterday, the gate stayed down. Today, it rose without a glance. Emergencies make everyone honest. Inside, the lobby smelled like burnt coffee and panic. Lucas Brandt waited with a folder tucked under his arm, as if paper could fix steel. "Tessa," he said, too bright, "there appears to be a compatibility issue between your original design and some minor enhancements we implemented." "Minor," I repeated. In the control room, dashboards argued with themselves. Green beside red, orders marked complete, while pallets sat untouched. Renee Park met me at the door, jaw set. "They disabled the operator alert channel," she murmured. "People see problems and the system pretends nothing is happening." I looked at Lucas. "Did you mute the feedback loop?" He blinked fast. "We streamlined it. Too many alerts create noise." "Noise keeps people alive," I said. "Silence gets somebody hurt." Morgan arrived, pale and sweating through his confidence. "Can you fix it?" "Yes," I said. "But not while Lucas is touching anything." Lucas started to protest. I raised a hand. "This is triage, not theater." I logged in. My credentials worked, but the platform felt wrong, like a familiar tool with the handle shaved down. Jonah Bell, our independent controls auditor, had already mirrored the logs to an external vault. History was now harder to erase. I opened the change ledger and scrolled. Lucas had edited timing offsets across multiple cells, altered safety interlocks, and rerouted exception handling so errors disappeared into a void. He had not tightened screws. He had removed the bolts and called it efficiency. "Lucas," I said, "you changed the handshake routines." "I adjusted the sequence to reduce latency," he said, offended. "You adjusted it to break," I replied. "Your sequence forces confirmations that never arrive. That is why everything froze." Morgan tried to sound neutral. "Can we solve this without pointing fingers?" "We can solve it," I said. "We can point fingers afterward with screenshots." For the next stretch of hours, I worked with Renee and the line leads, not with Lucas. We reinstated operator alerts, rolled back the timing edits, and restored the interlocks he had streamlined. As the system returned to sanity, the plant woke in pieces, one conveyor, one robot, one shipping screen at a time. Workers drifted back to stations, cautious at first, then moving with the calm of people who knew their craft better than any dashboard. Near the end of the day, Morgan cornered me. "Thank you," he said, then hurried on. "We need to keep this contained. The board is anxious." "Contained," I said. "Like the truth is a chemical spill." "We will address process failures later," Morgan insisted. I nodded politely, the way you do when you plan to burn a bridge after you cross it. Lucas approached again, folder in hand. "Corporate is hosting the Forge Forward Summit," he said. "They want a case study on the pulse line rebuild. I am presenting." "You," I said, tasting the audacity. "It reflects well on the facility," he replied. "On all of us." All of us. The phrase was theft with manners. After he left, my phone vibrated with a message from Jonah. "Snapshot complete. Unauthorized safety edits confirmed. Recommend immediate disclosure." Renee glanced at me. "He is going to take credit." "I know," I said. I watched the hallway where Lucas had vanished toward the executive offices. "Let him have the microphone," I murmured. "I am bringing the spotlight." The Forge Forward Summit was held in our own conference wing because Orchid Forge loved symbolism. They hung banners in confident fonts and paraded visitors from other facilities through our corridors like the plant was a trophy case. Lucas Brandt thrived. He floated between handshakes, telling stories where the hero was always a cross-functional leader and the operators were always stakeholders. Morgan Vance hovered near the back, checking his phone with the intensity of a man trying to read his future in email previews. Renee and I stood with the line leads and a few invited operators. Leon whispered, "Is he really going to talk like he built it?" "Try not to throw anything," I said. Lucas took the stage around mid-morning. His first slide read, "Pulse Line Rebuild, Case Study in Modern Manufacturing." His name sat under Program Owner. Morgan was executive sponsor. No mention of the operators, the line leads, or the people who had actually made the rebuild work. Lucas spoke smoothly about algorithmic optimization, predictive governance, and reduced human variance. He praised standardization, which sounds noble until you remember it often means ignoring reality. Then he reached a slide titled Risk Event and Recovery. "We experienced a brief disruption due to legacy process complexity," he said. "We resolved it quickly through decisive leadership and targeted calibration." Legacy process complexity. That was his phrase for disabling safety routines and muting operator alerts. Applause rose, polite and automatic. Then the moderator opened the floor for questions. I raised my hand. Lucas froze for a fraction of a second, then smiled. "Yes, Tessa." "Thank you," I said, stepping forward. "You said the disruption came from legacy complexity. Which legacy component failed?" Lucas did not flinch. "Undocumented exception pathways in the platform." "Interesting," I said, "because the independent audit log shows those pathways were edited the day before the disruption by an account assigned to you." A ripple moved through the room. Morgan went still. Lucas' smile tightened. "That is not accurate." I looked at the moderator. "May I display the audit snapshot?" The moderator hesitated, then nodded. Jonah Bell had given me an off-site copy. I did not need the plant network. I plugged a small device into the presentation port and mirrored the screen. A timeline appeared. Unforgiving. Rows of changes. Safety interlocks disabled. Operator alert channel muted. Error handling rerouted. The edits clustered around one user, L. Brandt. Lucas' face drained. "Logs can be interpreted many ways," he said. "Tessa regained access during stabilization. She could have—" "No," I said. "The snapshot was taken before my access was restored, by an independent auditor. Jonah is in the hallway if anyone wants to ask him how timestamps work." I clicked to a comparison view. Original safety logic beside Lucas' version. Differences highlighted like bruises. Someone in the front row stopped taking notes. Someone else started. Morgan tried to stand. "We can discuss this privately." "We can," I said. "But Lucas just used a public stage to sell a lie. Lies deserve audiences." Lucas cleared his throat. "It was stress testing," he said. "A controlled exercise." "Controlled," Renee said, loud enough to carry, "like turning off seatbelts to see if people sit straighter." A few people laughed, then stopped when they realized how close that joke was to a lawsuit. I turned back to the crowd. If stress testing disables interlocks, it is not testing, it is sabotage. If it removes operator alerts, it is not modernization, it is negligence. And if it happens with executive cover, it becomes a governance failure. That last phrase landed. Corporate people loved phrases until the phrases pointed at them. Morgan's phone began vibrating. He did not answer. His hands were shaking. In the front row, two Orchid Forge executives who had nodded through Lucas' slide deck finally stopped nodding. One of them leaned toward the moderator and whispered something that made the moderator face change. Lucas stood very still, as if motion might make the evidence louder. Then the moderator picked up the microphone and said, "We will take a short break." And I realized my revenge had moved past Lucas. It had reached the people who signed him into power. The short break lasted long enough for corporate counsel to arrive, and for Lucas Brandt to learn that confidence does not count as a safety protocol. When the room reconvened, Lucas sat in the front row, no longer a speaker, just a person who had been caught holding the match. Morgan Vance avoided my eyes like they were subpoenas. An Orchid Forge executive, Celeste Arkwright, took the microphone. We are initiating an immediate review of platform governance and safety compliance, she said. Mr. Brandt will not present further. Miss Quinn, please join us for a closed session. The closed session happened in the glass conference room that always made people feel like specimens. The difference this time was that the specimen had evidence. Celeste sat with two other executives and counsel. Morgan sat beside them, shoulders collapsed. Lucas sat across from me, hands clasped too tightly. Celeste spoke first. We reviewed the audit snapshot. The edits are real. The safety impacts are unacceptable. Lucas tried. It was stress testing. I was demonstrating resilience. Counsel cut him off. You disabled interlocks and muted operator alerts without authorization. Lucas turned toward Morgan, searching for rescue. Morgan stared at the table, suddenly fascinated by wood grain. Celeste looked at me. Why did the platform lock down? That was by design, I said. During the rebuild, I added a safeguard called Sentinel Mode. If critical safety logic is altered outside approved review, the platform quarantines itself. It stops production rather than run unsafe changes. It is painful. It is also cheaper than an injury. Counsel raised an eyebrow. Was that documented? Yes, I said. In the controls package Lucas requested, he did not read it. Lucas snapped. You built a booby trap. I built a seatbelt, I replied. You tried to remove it because it slowed the car. Celeste let that sit, then asked the question Morgan had tried to dodge. What do you want? I did not ask for a trophy. I asked for guardrails that would outlast this room. First, I said, a written guarantee of no layoffs tied to this incident, and no contractor substitution for core operator roles. Second, a governance rule. No platform edits without approval from operations, safety, and an independent auditor. Third, a standing operator council with authority to pause lines for safety or quality without retaliation. Fourth, restoration of my control of the platform. Morgan finally looked up. That last part is difficult. Celeste's voice was quiet and final. After today, it is not. She slid a folder across the table. Inside was a revised offer. Director of Plant Systems and Safety, reporting directly to corporate operations, with budget authority to replicate the rebuild methods across facilities. Another page established the Operator Council. The legal language was dense, but the meaning was simple. The people who knew the work would have protection, and the people who liked shortcuts would have supervision. Lucas read it too and went pale. What happens to me? He asked. Celeste did not soften the answer. You will be reassigned to compliance training under Ms. Quinn oversight, pending the investigation. Lucas opened his mouth, then closed it. Even his buzzwords could not compete with consequences. I signed, because titles are levers, and levers move what speeches cannot. When I returned to the floor, Renee met me near line 4. The machines were running again, steady, the right kind of noise. Workers watched me with hope. No layoffs, I told them. Not from this. And if anyone tries to edit safety logic without review, Sentinel Mode will shut it down again, and the report will go straight to corporate. Leon grinned. So the system learned to snitch. It learned to survive, I said. Renee leaned closer. Is this the revenge you wanted? I glanced toward the control room where Lucas sat at a workstation, finally taking notes like a student instead of a conqueror. Morgan walked past with counsel, speaking quietly. The best revenge, I said, is making sure the people who do the work never pay for the ego of the people who take the credit. The line kept moving, the plant kept breathing, and the silence that followed was not fear, it was stability.